Discord.
Can you mute my mic? So, Austin, did you hear about Elon Musk shooting a harpoon into space?
No.
You didn't hear this?
No.
I don't know if it's actually a harpoon. That was just the headline I saw. So it could be totally fake news. I have no idea.
Sounds like fake news.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe he's going to like catch a space rock or something. I don't know. I think it's a satellite. I know he's putting a new satellite into space.
Maybe it's like code name Harpoon.
It's going to be like one of the farthest orbit satellites. Not like completely far, but just like medium far satellites. I don't know.
Okay.
Have you heard about that, Paul?
No. I care more about how his company, Tesla, is going to run out of money before year's end because they're selling junk bonds right now.
Wait,
And
really?
therefore, Tesla continues to be a scam, and people should really stop believing in it as a company.
When we say run out
Elon
of money,
Musk is a engineer, not a manager of a business.
so when we say run out of money, does that mean like their business is shutting down, or they're just going to get more investment?
No, they can't get more investment. Well, like they can get more investment if people want to take a huge risk, but
Let's
they're
do
gonna
it.
literally run out of cash.
I say we do it.
Let's do it.
I mean, we can invest all of the Hollow Herald's money and all of our money personally. Everything that we have in
Personally,
cryptocurrencies.
I'm very against it. Investing in Tesla. I just think they're not the way forward with electric cars. I think it got the industry moving towards electric cars, which is a great thing, but I think they're gonna get beaten and beaten hard. But
Okay.
hey, I'm
We'll
a
see what
doubter.
happens.
Let's see him prove me wrong. I hope
Every
he
do-
does.
every doctor has one. So I mean, if the doctors have them, then the plebeians like us, the poor people, want them, and then it just trickles down. It's a trickle down, really nice car effect. If this is hello and welcome to the Reality Check podcast. I have no idea what episode number this is. What episode number is this?
I don't know.
Let's just say 40 something. 40 something. We'll throw it in there.
We'll figure it out later.
Welcome to the podcast. Episode 48. We're getting really close to 50. We'll maybe make it there by next year sometime if we keep going at this rate. Anyways, I'm Eric. I'm your host. I'm joined by my good friend and my not so good friend, and we're actually joined by a guest today that we've been talking about having on for the podcast for quite some time now, and we will get to introducing him in just one moment. I'm going to let everybody else introduce themselves first. I don't know if that's kosher. Are you supposed to let the guest introduce themselves first? Or we'll keep it a surprise for a minute. We'll keep it a surprise. We'll unveil. Go ahead and introduce yourselves, boys.
I mean, his name is in the title.
Oh.
But my name is Austin, and I am excited to be here today. It's going to be a great podcast. I think we got some exciting things to cover, and I'm excited for our special guest.
And my good friend, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Paul, and I just realized I spelled our guest's name wrong, so I'm such a shitty person. I'm sorry I didn't do my homework well enough. I will fix that immediately. I apologize.
And
But yeah, I'm Paul, and I'm excited to be here.
this is our first guest in a really, really long time in a video format, so we're messing things up. So anyways, today we are joined by Jesse of Practical VR, and most of you probably actually know him from the Holo Developers Slack as the founder. He's been making the rounds a lot at a lot of conventions lately, so if you guys are listening, you guys have either A, met him, B, talked to him on Slack, or maybe his Discord. There's lots of avenues you guys have probably talked to him, and I'm going to go ahead and let him introduce himself and talk about himself for just half a moment. Go ahead, Jesse.
Hey everybody, it's Jesse McCulloch. As mentioned, I'm with Practical VR now. Also the whole developer Slack and everywhere else. So I'm super excited to be here. I listen to the podcast and always want to jump in and talk to you guys. So I'm glad we finally made it happen.
No, yeah, that's a big point. I feel like when I listen to podcasts before we got into podcasting, I would always be like, "Oh, this is how I would respond to the person that's talking the podcast," or "This is how I would say it," and I'd always want that opportunity because they rarely look at the live stream, which is different. So now we actually get that opportunity. We can have everybody here together to join us. Anyways, so we brought Jesse on today to talk a little bit about their contest that Practical VR is putting on right now. We have links to it down in the description somewhere below. We also have timestamps and link dump down below if you guys are watching the pre-recorded version. So go ahead and you guys can scroll through there through a lot of our topics. We're going to hit a lot of topics. We're going to hit on privacy. We're going to hit on cryptocurrencies and mixed with augmented reality. All of these have to focus around augmented reality and mixed reality. We're going to hit on the contest, and we're going to hit on a couple other topics, I think. So it's going to be a good one. Go ahead and jump through the timestamps if you guys are interested, and let's just jump right into it. So Jesse, go ahead and talk to us about your contest a little bit and where the idea came from.
Yeah, so I guess let's talk about the company a little bit. So
Let's start there. That's a better idea.
Yeah, so Practical is interested in building the AR cloud, which is a fairly new term that's kind of come about in the last year. And so the idea is that AR is super cool, and we look at the HoloLens and AR Kit and AR Core. All this technology is really cool, but it's like a very singular one-person experience. So my girlfriend comes over, and I've got my HoloLens on, and I'm air tapping around. She can't really tell what the heck I'm doing, and has no way of engaging, and it's very disconnecting for something that's supposed to be this technology that's going to connect us all together. So this idea of the AR cloud is that once there is a common understanding of the world, a digital clone of the world, so to speak, then you can start putting content into this shared understanding and share it across devices. So whether it's across HoloLenses or between a HoloLens and a phone or HoloLens and Magic Leap and whatever else is coming in the future, once there's a shared understanding, there can be shared placement and you can start doing a lot of cool things. So we're working on building the AR cloud. The first step of that, what we call our pillars of practical, is maps and then objects and then actions. So maps is kind of the first step. And so we are working on mapping the world. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources of like Google to go send out a bunch of cars and people to go do this and have them, you know, collect all this information ourselves. So what we're trying to do is engage everybody to do it through some crowdsourcing. And so that's kind of where this practical mapping contest comes in. We wanted to be able to prove our concept and have people out collecting maps for us. So we created an app that uses our mapping experience, which is going to be something that's going to be available to developers for their own apps. So instead of having to go in and create your own mapping experience at the beginning of your app, we'll have an SDK you can drop into your app as a developer and just have that. And then those maps will get sent to us for collection, and you'll get a very nice, clean spatial map for your app.
So I've noticed with the contest a lot, you're getting a lot of different submissions from all over the world. A submission is you put on your HoloLens. You guys haven't watched the video we just put out. Go ahead and watch that. It describes everything about what the app does. But for you guys that haven't seen it yet, you basically put on your HoloLens, you map in an area, and then it pops up with a code. You insert the code, and boom, you're entered into the contest, and you've submitted a spatial map. And then they use their algorithms and turn it into a dot data. What's the technical term for what kind of map that is?
So it's a point cloud.
Point cloud, thank you. A point cloud mesh. We'll pull up one here in just a minute and you guys can check it out. But I'm curious, you guys have got a lot of different submissions from all over the world and a lot of different places. Are you guys more interested in outdoor mapping or indoor mapping, or just kind of any maps that you guys can get your hands on?
So right now it's just any maps, because what we've got to be able to do is we've got to be able to run some algorithms on it and do some machine learning and say, you know, these two maps are the same room, and be able to figure out what are duplicates. That way we don't have a bunch of duplicate data in our system. Eventually we want to be able to run algorithms on it to determine, you know, this is probably a table, or this is a chair, or that's a counter. Mm-hmm. So right now we're kind of in data collection mode, just trying to collect these maps. So like you said, we've gotten all kinds of interesting maps from all over the world, people's houses, playgrounds, gardens,
so what's your
cool
favorite
stuff.
map that you have?
Yeah, so there's a couple of favorites. My first favorite one that came across, Sean Ong, who I'm sure a lot of you guys know about, was in Singapore last week, and he mapped out a garden there that turned out really spectacularly. And then Charles Poole has been mapping. He's been taking his kids to different outdoor playgrounds and mapping those, and some of those are actually really cool maps as well.
That's awesome.
Interesting. We have one here on React, but my Chromebook struggles to look at them, sadly. So I would not recommend jumping to it. I can see it's like a playground. Anyways, we have a whole video on it. Go ahead and check that out. It's really cool. What I was surprised with is the fidelity. I felt like with normal spatial mapping, because there's a lot of apps that have done this kind of concept before, where you map in a room and then you get a little 3D model of it. And I've never seen one that's as high resolution, or the detail makes so much sense. Like you can see like a chair sitting in your room. Normally with a HoloLens mesh, you just see like a blob in the middle of the room, or it just looks like, or just flattens it right out. But with this, you can actually tell if it's like a chair or a room. Or what really surprised me was about our hallway, and I could tell that it was like windows and bars and something against it. It was really interesting. So I'm curious with, this brings us to our first topic that I wanted to hit on, is privacy. So I noticed when you brought this up in the Holo Developer Slack, a lot of people, their first inclination was, what are you guys doing with the meshes, and how does privacy work around all this? Could you maybe touch on that for just a moment?
Yeah, so privacy is actually a really key issue for us. our founder has been a privacy advocate for a long time, far before he ever started in on HoloLens stuff. So that's always one of our, kind of our key things that we think about is how do we protect that? So we don't collect any personally identifiable information. So like even the mapper tags are not connected to an email address or anything. So if people don't tell us who they are, we have no idea who they actually are submitting these. Oh, go ahead.
No, so you said an interesting thing too, because I noticed that people were worried about going around in a public place and spatial mapping in, like you said, a park or maybe a mall or an outdoor garden or something like that. And I felt that was a very interesting concept to me, because I thought about that because we have laws right now in the books about filming in locations, and that's kind of what you referenced. You're like, I feel like if it's okay to film there, you're probably okay to map that area. And so I started thinking about it because I felt kind of weird personally putting my house mapping on there. I didn't personally feel that, but I know some people would feel kind of weird putting an exact map of their house. But then I thought, people film in their houses, they upload to Snapchat, they upload to YouTube, they upload to Facebook, all these pictures and YouTube videos of their exact outline of their house. So it's not that much difference from a spatial map, in my opinion. You actually probably get a lot less information from a spatial map about privacy issues, I would say, than that. And this is something me and Paul hit on a lot, is with privacy and HoloLens, because that's one of the things that killed the Google Glass, was people worried about privacy. And so this is just an interesting concept. So what are your opinions on like mapping in public places or practical VRs or whatever?
Yeah, so our official policy is, if it's a public place, you're probably okay to do it. And for the same reasons that you mentioned, if you can take pictures there or you can film there, then it's probably pretty safe. The other half of it is people don't really know what you're doing in the HoloLens. Like, they can't tell that you're mapping outer space. So like, who's really gonna know? I don't know if that's like the best attitude to have, but that's kind of the reality of it. Is that like when I was at GDC, I was scanning there, and like there are security guards and cops watching me, but they didn't have a clue what I was doing while I was mapping. For all they know, I'm just looking at a website or something. So.
No, you're
so it's kind of like the ignorance is bliss kind of idea for privacy, where it's just like, oh, I don't know the government's watching me, or I don't know all these companies are collecting data, so everything's fine. My life is just so convenient, and I owe these companies nothing.
I don't know that I'd go that far. I mean, the reality is you're capturing it. So it's not like I'm watching you or I am collecting it without your knowledge. I mean, you're out collecting the data. The other people around Jesse. You might not know that you're collecting it. So.
No, you're exactly right. People don't understand what's going on. I think that's one of my favorite things, actually, is kind of wear the HoloLens in public. And what's crazy is it's so funny, the lack of knowledge for everybody, and which is totally fine. I mean, it's a very niche market right now. It's a growing market, and unless you're into it, you don't really know what's going on. But like, you have to take your laptop out when you go through an airport, but you don't have to take your HoloLens out. Or Sean Ong made a very funny video where he wasn't allowed to bring his laptop on the plane from Dubai or somewhere, but he was allowed to bring it on his HoloLens, and was using his computer just as if it was his HoloLens. People just don't understand, and I wear it around all the time in public because we film a lot of public videos, and people give me slightly weird looks, but it's almost like they don't even care. Like, you don't even notice. It's like so futuristic. It just like they just blur out about it. But
it's those dang millennials and their headset things.
Exactly.
I'm actually starting to get more and more people who come up and they're like, hey, is that a HoloLens? Like, people are starting to recognize it in the wild, which is a lot different because, like you guys, I used mine out and about all the time. For a good stretch of time, I was working daily at different Starbucks. And so I always had mine out in public, and people would be like, hey, what is that? Now I get people who are like, hey, is that a HoloLens? And, usually I'm like, yeah, do you want to try it? And they get super excited.
People actually notice what it is. I don't think I've ever had someone stop me and be like, oh, is that a HoloLens? Besides when I'm at like a convention or something very tech oriented. That's interesting. I like that that's getting more mainstream appeal. I mean, I guess Microsoft's been putting a lot of Super Bowl ads and such with it now. So they're trying to market the heck out of it, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Paul, would you say at your work, people on average know what the HoloLens is?
I would say not at all, really, unless I tell them. in the group I just joined, I feel like they all know, but I haven't like brought it up. I'll probably ask them tomorrow, but I feel like they're more tech savvy as we're like the report development group for the company. So I feel like more people are more like inclined to know about that stuff. But really, not a lot of people know what the HoloLens is. Like if I brought one into work and started working on it, people would be like, "What the hell is he doing?" kind of stuff. You know?
What is surprising though is people have been sending me like Magic Leap ads. Surprisingly enough, I didn't think anybody knew what Magic Leap was or Meta. Well, people don't really know what Meta is, but I didn't think anybody knew what Magic Leap was because it's such a secretive company. There's not much marketing around it, but people have been sending me Magic Leap leaks randomly, so they've been making their way into the rounds. Jesse, how do you feel about? First off, let's talk a little bit about terminology. What's your preferred term for what the HoloLens does?
I use mixed reality. I've bought in with the idea of that, being a spectrum, and there's AR devices and VR devices on the spectrum at opposite ends, and someday we'll come to some middle device that can do both.
No, you're exactly right. We subscribe to the spectrum ideology too. That was really nice when that came out. But that's been a long going process. That's one of the biggest debates we get on our channel is people saying that's not mixed reality, that's not virtual reality, that's not augmented reality. Or the biggest one we get is that's not an actual hologram. But then we just say, come on, get with the times.
Yeah.
What's your general feeling about how mixed reality, as far as not just HoloLens, but the whole entire spectrum of devices and everything are doing in 2018? Because we just barely started 2018, and you've been around probably since about 2016, 2015, right?
Yep. And
how do you feel like the overall public opinion and also the underground, because the community feels super underground right now. How do you feel is everybody feeling excited from your overall gatheringness? I don't know how to really word this. Are people excited from what you can tell, or are people kind of falling off the bandwagon a little bit?
No, I think people are excited, and I'm starting to see more and more people from outside my bubble get excited. Like I definitely realize that I live in a bubble of people that I surround myself with that are into this kind of stuff. Yeah. But I also have a lot of non-technical people around me that I interact with on a regular basis, and I'm starting to see more and more of them get excited. I was hearing a friend say that they were at the mall the other day, and some pop-up has a Vive in there, and they're doing virtual reality, and it's like $5 for 5 minutes or something stupid like that.
We have those.
Yeah, which I'm like, okay, I would never spend $5 to spend 5 minutes in virtual reality, but then I live in it and I'm used to it, so that's kind of being insulated in that bubble. But
we rant about those all the time.
Yeah, but realizing that my friends' kids are into it and they're excited about spending 5 minutes just checking it out and getting to see what it's all about. So I definitely think it's becoming more and more mainstream, and it will become more and more mainstream as prices come down and computers get better and everything.
Do you think this is because of the adoption of virtual reality by like Oculus and the more affordability from Windows Mixed Reality, or do you think it's like things like AR Kit that are already being implemented in people's phones that are drawing them more to the scene, or do you think it's just becoming a whole community without altogether? If that makes sense.
I think it's just happening. I don't think there's one driver. I think it's just a natural progression that we're making our way towards. I think if you look at things that are being done in AR Kit and AR Core for the phone, a lot of people don't even realize that they're messing with augmented reality there.
Yes.
And everybody's like, oh, Pokemon Go was a huge hit because it's augmented reality. It's like, no, Pokemon Go was a huge hit because there's a huge Pokemon fan base from 20 years ago that jumped on board with it. And most people turned the augmented reality portion of it off because it slowed down their phones.
I find it very... Sorry, go ahead.
So I was going to say, so a lot of people, I think, are using augmented reality features without probably realizing they're using augmented reality when it comes to a phone device.
I think it's really awesome, actually, how often people don't realize they're using augmented reality. And that's kind of what we talked about years ago when we first started the podcast, is that it would like seep into people's lives, either A, their work lives, or B, their social lives. Little aspects of augmented reality. One I like to use is Snapchat and their augmented reality features that have become very popular. Where people, they don't look at it and they say, oh, I'm using augmented reality right now, or mixed reality, or whatever you want to call it. I'm using some immersive technology, but they are. And I think that's what's really beautiful about the organicness of augmented reality is you don't even realize you're using it. And my favorite thing about the HoloLens, and I'll say it today, is just how natural it is to throw it on. You know, you try to teach a grandparent to use a phone or something, and it takes forever, and they're really resistant against it. But you throw a HoloLens on their head, and they're totally into it within a few minutes, and they're just naturally navigating their way through it. And I feel that way about most augmented reality features, if done correctly. Do you demo the HoloLens to a lot of people?
Oh yeah, a ton of people.
What's people's average reaction? Because I was interested in this.
They usually spend like the first 2 minutes with their mouth hanging open, like not even being able to like convey what they're feeling. And then they start thinking about it, and depending on what you show them, like a lot of the times I like to show them things like holo tours, which is super immersive.
Yeah, definitely.
Or if I've got a long time for them to be in, you know, this is a really cool demo because it shows the spatial capabilities of the HoloLens.
Mind blowing.
But even in just having somebody like in the shell click and see the spatial map building really kind of blows them away when they start thinking about everything that this device is doing.
Do you ever
a lot of awe. For sure.
Do you ever get this? I always talk about this, and people don't really understand what I mean on the podcast very often because a lot of people don't demo their HoloLens a lot. Do you ever get people saying, wow, it's just kind of a hard concept to explain. They say, wow, this will be cool in the future. Like they don't really realize that they're doing it right now and that this is like an actual object that they're using. They just say, they kind of blow it away because it's so futuristic. And they say, this will be cool. But I'm like, no, it's cool right now. You're actually trying it. You're actually using it. Do you ever get that kind of reaction?
Yeah, and I think what people are doing is projecting the fact that they don't have one yet. Like, because a lot of times I'll get that after they're like, so how much is one of these? And I'm like, well, the developer device is like $3,000 right now. Yeah. And then they're like, oh, like very cautiously handing it back to me.
You're exactly right. So okay. Go ahead.
So yeah, I definitely think people see this as a future technology, but I think that's more not the fact that the technology is available, but it's not within reach for them yet.
Right.
No, you're exactly right. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to jump over to a kind of a hard shift over to another topic that we wanted to hit on. Have you heard of virtual real estate?
A little bit.
A little bit. Paul, do you want to go ahead and explain some virtual real estate for everybody on the podcast and for Jesse, and then we can talk about it for a minute?
Yeah, so recently, I don't have a link or a name because it was pretty obscure, but there was a company that started an ICO for virtual real estate. And by ICO, I mean initial coin offering. They created a cryptocurrency that their goal is to sell virtual real estate using this cryptocurrency, which I think is completely ridiculous. But the underlying, again, with all cryptocurrencies, the underlying technology there, the thought that there's actually someone looking to value virtual real estate right now is just amazing. But virtual real estate is really just like the space around you that when you have an augmented or mixed reality device on, you can see the things around you. So like someone could buy advertising space in the air right outside your building or things like that. Obviously, I should hope that you'd own your own virtual real estate around your own house and things like that. But like imagine billboards in the AR world. What do you think about virtual real estate in those terms? And how would it fit into the mission of practical VR?
Yeah, so we're kind of in an interesting spot. So right now, like virtual real estate is completely in an app by app basis. So it's not like somebody could go put something there that everybody's going to see. They'd literally have to launch the app and have the space get recognized, and then and then the digital content shows up. So we're kind of protected from it right now, provided somebody doesn't build an app that just throws advertisements in your face, at which point you'd probably never launch it again and uninstall it, and they'd go down the toilet really fast. So
Definitely.
So, we're kind of protected from it, but, kind of the long-term future of this, I think, is going to be apps are going to go away, and we're going to live in this appless world where your device knows where you are and what you're doing and the context for it, and kind of launches apps in the background, and you never really realize that you're in an app. You're just in this experience all the time. And so it definitely does get interesting when you start thinking about things like that. So a blog post I'm currently writing right now for Practical is, what's grocery shopping going to look like with the AR cloud in the future? So you imagine going into a shopping center, a supermarket, and maybe it pulls down your shopping list from the cloud, and because the store's been spatially mapped and everything's been located in there, it lays out the most efficient path through the store for you, and all you're doing is following an arrow on the floor, and it'd be like, okay, grab this here, grab that there. But at the same time, how do you protect yourself from having everything on those shelves having like some flashing advertising thing going on too? So there's definitely going to be a balance there, and I think it's going to be similar to the web. You go to web pages that have 1,000 ads, and the solution there is people have built an ad blocker. And so if you're savvy, then you don't ever see any of the advertising that happens on the internet. So
I think you're exactly right. So what's interesting too is what surprised me about what practical mapping does is that's that progression. That's like that natural progression we're talking about, is now we're getting to the point where we're starting to actually store these spatial data. It's not just like Microsoft storing whatever you data, but we're actually having like a separate entity, Practical VR, going through these and building algorithms to manage all of this spatial mapping data. And so we're seeing these first steps being taken towards like you guys' slogan is mapping the world, which is what is necessary to make virtual reality, virtual reality. Does that make sense? Is that what it's called? Virtual reality?
Sure.
What were we calling it?
Just say real estate.
Thank you.
You're gonna mess yourself up.
Virtual reality.
So virtual real estate, and so we're seeing our first steps towards that. Is that a thought pattern you guys are taking at Practical VR as you guys are collecting this? Is how we would utilize this to let's not just say place advertisements, let's just say better augmented reality in a certain way. So what is your guys' plan of working with the data you guys are going to get?
Yeah, so the idea behind this is that as you collect, and you guys showed this in the video, there's like little tokens.
Yes.
And so the idea would be that you collect these, you do mapping, develop. So I guess let's back up a little bit. So developers are going to put this at the front of their app because they require spatial mapping for their app to place content within your space in a realistic manner.
Yes.
So usually right now what happens is you fire it up and the developer hopefully has built a nice mapping experience. Not always the case. And you map it and you go through the app and do your thing. And then the next time you fire it up, you get to go map your space again, because most people are not saving these maps off in a persistent way. If they are, and you go into a different room and you want to use the app, then you have to map it again. And mapping sometimes can be a time-consuming process. It could take 3 or 4 minutes sometimes to build a really good mesh. And that's if you know what you're doing. Somebody who hasn't done it before, it can take a little bit longer. So the idea being they implement our mapping SDK at the front end for this mapping experience. And now when they map, they collect these little tokens. Those will get saved off in a wallet. And then they go into, say you go into a Starbucks and somebody has already mapped it. What we can do is we can determine that that space has already been mapped. And rather than making you map it, we say, hey, would you like to spend some of the tokens that you've collected and download this map instead? And so now they're able to pull down that map and skip the whole mapping experience altogether by using these tokens. And that's our incentive for people to collect, is that they're collecting these tokens while they're mapping, and then they'll be able to spend them to pull down maps in the future.
And then who gets those tokens when they do say, "Oh, I'm at the Starbucks and I don't want to bother mapping it myself, so I'll pay Practical to just upload this map, like to download this map onto my HoloLens for me." Who would get that token? Would the user who originally mapped it get the token, or is Practical going to take all the tokens and redistribute them?
So they'll get redistributed, yeah.
Okay.
So we're pulling them. It's basically it's just a transaction. But so as people are mapping, they're earning these tokens, and then also the developer who implemented it into their app also gets tokens from people mapping with their app. So a portion of what gets earned is shared with the developer as well.
Okay. And how are you going to assign like are you trying to assign a financial value to these coins, or is it really just going to be a matter of like convenience and almost just making it like a game? Like I know on Priuses, to get people to drive more economically, you can play a little game where you can earn like eco tokens or whatever when you drive with only the battery or something like that. I know it's a really weird example, but I just want to have you elaborate on that concept.
No, it's a great question. So our token, and it's called Prax. We haven't launched yet. The whole nother issue. We can get into that here in a second. But our token is going to be a utility token, which means that we don't assign a value to it. That said, if it ends up on an exchange, there could be a value for it, but that's not our goal. Is for there to be, we don't want people buying these hoping that they're going to get rich off of, buying Prax and the value going up.
Dang it, that's what we were hoping for.
Yeah, dang.
We want people to be using them. And so our initial use is, like I said, is going to be the earning them by making maps and then spending them by downloading maps. But in the future, that may not always be the case. There may be other use cases for being able to spend your Prax within augmented reality on, maybe models or something like that. You want to decorate your house, and
interesting.
And so you can pull down, these models that will be persistent in your space or in any space that you own, so to speak.
So I have a question. Does so you guys also have other software called Practical Analytics, correct?
Yep.
Could you explain just a quick moment what that is for everybody that's listening, just in case they don't understand?
Yeah, so Practical Analytics lets developers get insight into their HoloLens apps and what users are looking at, what they're clicking on, or what they're not looking at and not clicking on. Among other things, we can do incrementing things and decrementing things so that, as people are playing games, we can keep track of points and stuff like that. But it just really gives insight to a developer as to how their app's being used.
No, that's super useful information. I mean, we see how much Google Analytics does just for web pages. I mean, we take that whole spectrum and add that to a 3D or almost 4D type mixed reality spectrum. It becomes very important to be able to trap that data and see what people are looking at, how long they're looking at it, how they move around their room, how they move around their space. Is Prax going to fit into Practical Analytics at all? I don't know if you guys have announced anything like that. I'm just curious.
It's not at this time. I don't know that we've even, thought about how that's going to fit into it. Practical mapping kind of came out of Practical Analytics when we realized that the mapping portion was going to be super important to this idea of the AR cloud. And so the mapping was kind of going to be a separate part, or a part of the analytics. And it's kind of grown into its own thing as we've looked at it and what it's going to be. So we've kind of moved beyond the analytics. We still have the analytics and still have it available, and it doesn't cost developers anything to use it. So we definitely encourage people to use it, but we're kind of pushing towards the mapping at this point.
So as technology moves forward and we progress, more devices are going to come out, and there's going to be new companies. There's probably going to be one. This is going to be two questions wrapped up into one. First of all, is Prax and practical mapping going to be a part of future devices, or are you guys going to be HoloLens specific?
No, we're just starting with HoloLens because it is by far the best capable for mapping, spatial mapping.
Yes, definitely.
So, ARKit and AR Core do SLAM mapping, which is not nearly as accurate as what we're getting off the HoloLens. But we definitely have plans to go there. Magic Leap, based off of their SDK, has spatial mapping capabilities, so we fully intend to go there. And then whatever other devices come out, the idea of the AR cloud is not going to be, it's going to be something for the HoloLens, or it's going to be something for Meta or Magic Leap or AR phone, AR Kit, AR Core. It's going to be one place where all these devices can work together.
So that being said, do you see in the future, this is going to get a little bit theoretical here for a moment. In the future, do you see it being more like, let me think of how I want to word this, a shared marketplace or a shared experience or a shared technology, kind of like, let's say, Steam, almost. Steam is to computer gaming and computer software. Do you see AR taking more of that kind of a role, or do you see it more being separate, such as Android versus iOS versus Windows Phone, where everybody kind of has their own devices and their own experiences, where they all kind of work together with a little bit of jankiness? Or do you see it as more everybody sharing one platform, one spectrum, whether I'm on device A or device B, we can both look at the same holograms, we can both look at the same apps? What do you kind of see as the future in that?
I mean, ideally, it's going to be all these devices are working together on some common standard, and I think that's the way consumers want it. Like, even right now with virtual reality, like, there's some things that you can only do on the Vive or only do on the Rift, even though there's like this common platform of Steam that lets you do stuff on all of them. Not everybody goes with that, and that's really frustrating as a user. I just want all my crap to work. Like, I don't really care about the middle part. I just want it to work with everything else. And so I think that that's always going to be the ideal situation for any platform.
Exactly. I don't think it's any more apparent than it will be for augmented mixed reality technologies, because there could never be anything more frustrating than I can see something, but my friend cannot see it in the same room, in the same setting, or I need to go to a meeting, but I have device A, they have device B, and stuff. So that's kind of the group that I'm going home. And that's kind of what I see with the Practical's cloud methodology and that ideology, working towards a common platform and a common way that we're working. So let me see. I think I had a couple more questions here. Do you have any questions, Austin?
So Jesse, do you have like any like timeline or when practical mapping will be implemented in somebody else's app or anything like that?
That's a good question.
Yes. So we're working on the SDK for HoloLens developers right now. We're planning on having an initial build of it out around the time of Microsoft's Build conference, which is coming up in like 2.5, 3 weeks. So
Sweet.
We're pushing on that for a timeline right now. As far as like the full implementation of Prax and everything, we're still working on our coin launch, and there's a lot of difficulty around that in the US, and we're trying to work through that and make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect ourselves and people who buy into this idea of Prax, so that nobody loses everything.
Right.
Yeah, no, definitely agreed. So go ahead and talk to us a little bit about the contest. How did you convince your boss or whoever came up with it? How did you guys convince to give such good prizes away?
So interestingly enough, the boss was the one who decided to give awesome prizes away. And I think it's well worth it. The idea is to generate some traction, get our name out there. And I think that's definitely happening in a good way.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The competition was really heating up. It went from like 0 to 100 in one day. I think it's like there's like 6 major players that are just going for it really ham right now. I know up above, I think Charles is in the chat, and he was saying he spent 4 to 6 hours mapping today. So that's impressive. That's really impressive.
And he told us today that he plans to have 100 maps submitted by the end of the day tomorrow. I'm like, dude.
Dang, awesome. That's going ham. We did some maps ourselves, and the process is really seamless. But that takes some work,
Yeah,
especially
that's
if you
time.
that's some time consuming, especially if you do big maps. Because I've seen what Charles has been submitting, and they look like fairly large maps. It's not like I just map part of one area and then go over and count that as a second map.
I don't think we can think of 100 locations.
Yeah, seriously.
Map.
We thought we were going to compete really hardcore, and then we saw how everybody else was going.
Yeah.
We're like, okay.
It's definitely interesting, and like you said, the prizes are pretty epic. You know, for first prize, we're giving away a ticket to build to the MR Jam at Build, which is going to be super awesome. I've been working on that with Microsoft. You know, hotel, some flight credit, we've got a 3D artist who's amazing, Angel, on our team. So we're giving away, like, for first prize, 10 3D assets that she'll work on for you for your use in your own apps. Plus, like, t-shirts and mugs and stickers and backpacks and all this.
That's what
all
we're
this
shooting
jazz.
for. We're going
I just
for
want a mug.
Yeah, I was going for backpack, so we'll probably be working.
We'll try.
We'll be working towards that. So I think we have a question from the chat real quick. Snowmo Games says, "How do you go about preventing intellectual property theft from major companies getting uploaded? How would I protect my IP, such as the Warner Brothers logo or the Starbucks logo?" And I am asking it whether there are companies that are very protective of IPs. So if I understand the question correctly, do you mean that you scan in something that's property? So, okay, I was kind of thinking about this, but I didn't know if this was too abstract. So Jesse, this might get a little abstract for a second. If I upload a spatial map of my house, is my spatial map technically my property? Or how does that work exactly? Because I'm using your platform to do it. I was just curious how this would work. But it is like my house and my area, and I took it. I don't know. I'm curious.
Yeah, so I guess, like, define your property in this context. Like,
Do I have rights to it? So, like, if someone's using my spatial map to do something nefarious, could I go and pull it down? And I know it's not tied to anything, so this wouldn't be. This is a very hypothetical, abstract concept. But what are your thoughts?
I don't know that we've crossed that bridge.
Okay.
Crossed that bridge yet. But as far as, like, you know, logos and stuff, the reality is that we're not doing photogrammetry. We're not capturing photos of any of this stuff in our app. You know, we're not taking video of what you're scanning. So we're not really capturing IP as far as, like, a logo while you're in Starbucks. Like, you're not going to be able to look at this map and go, oh, hey, that's a Starbucks logo there. At least not with spatial mapping.
Like SkyZ's app.
That it's at right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's
what
not like
about in a
Sky-
situation like David Copperfield is getting sued because he hurt someone doing one of his tricks in Vegas, and technically his IP is how he was doing the tricks, and the court made him reveal that they have, like, a system of underground tunnels at the convention center where he does his shows. Now, I would consider that to be IP if I was the magician. So how do you protect against things like that? Like, if you have a worker with a HoloLens come in and scan all the underground tunnels and things like that, how would you prevent that, I guess?
So
yeah,
I
get
don't know that
abstract,
that's
high
our
level.
job.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's our job to protect that. Like, like, if that's
I agree.
clearly intellectual property of MGM Grand and David Copperfield or wherever he's doing his show, like, I would hope that the workers would be like, hey, I probably shouldn't go spatially map this secret tunnel.
Just like they wouldn't want to take a video, right?
Right.
But then again, the law isn't very logical, and I'm sure the lawyers would be like, well, not only are we going to go after the employee, we're going to go after the company that collected the data, because people are just insane. So do you think that's a good defense as, like, a company to say, well, they're just stupid for doing it?
I don't think that's probably ever a good defense.
No, that's a very good point. With, like, because when we're talking about virtual real estate, it's one of those. This is such an exciting time because we've never been in this kind of atmosphere before, where this level of new technology. This is such a paradigm shift that I'm sure they went through in the paradigm shift of the web from not having the internet to having the internet. I almost see it as another renaissance of a virtual renaissance, a immersive renaissance, whatever, a cross reality, whatever kind of renaissance you want to say. There's so many like ifs and buts and whens and hows that go with all of this, and especially with virtual real estate, because I just think it's like, how far do I own above my house? How far do I own the wall? Do I own all this stuff? It's such
Eventually we're gonna start seeing signs that instead of like no smoking, it's like no HoloLens.
Oh, interesting. Like no leaving your holograms here. Like you actually left a hologram there and you just walked away from it, like a pollution, like hologram pollution. It's such an interesting spectrum.
Holographic pollution.
So
That's
let's
a
see.
Concept.
Charles wants to know, how did you get the HoloLens around your neck? Are other people's heads really that much smaller? Jesse's a bigger dude, so I don't know.
I literally have to open it almost all the way to do it. So interesting story. We had a Holo Developer Summit back in February, and we had the opportunity. Alex Kipman came in and talked to us, and he told us he wears his like this like everywhere. Like he just walks around with a HoloLens around his neck all the time, and he picked that up in Japan. The HoloLens is freaking huge in Japan, like massively way more popular than it is in the US. And that's like what they do. Like you'll go into classrooms and there's 30 or 40 students that all have HoloLenses, and they just
I love
wear
those
them
Twitter
around
pictures
their neck like this all the time. And so he picked that up from them, and then I picked it up from him.
Interesting.
Dude, that's sweet.
Yeah,
trend setting.
It's a good way to do it. Yeah, I love those pictures of seeing in Japan where you just see like hundreds of people, and then the couple dudes that don't have HoloLenses have pictures of them and they're holding them up to their faces. Those are super
actually,
good.
I know which picture you're talking about, where it looks like they just had like a piece of paper or something.
Yes.
Actually, what those are, because he talked about that too. There's like this whole third-party accessory market there, and those are actually sunshades. So they actually flip up and they go over the front like a visor, so that they can use their HoloLens outside or in direct sunlight.
Oh dang!
Goodness.
There's like all these accessories and
wow,
stuff that
what
we
the
don't
heck?
even have access to here in the U.S.
It's like already a mature market in Japan. That's
Right.
incredible.
Yeah.
Which is a good sign, because we tend to fall here in the U.S. We tend to follow a lot of Japanese trends. Just gets us a minute to get behind it, but we get there, especially with technology. I mean, they're way ahead of the times with everything. Dang. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Let's see. Question: when do you think we will see a consumer HoloLens? Says Snail Mail Games. Jesse, we've talked about this a lot on our podcast, so we'll let you go ahead and hit this one with your opinion.
So, Alex Kipman has come out and said, I could say tomorrow that we're selling a consumer version of the HoloLens, but at $3,000, nobody's going to buy it. So they're not going to say that they've got a consumer version until they can get the price sub $1,000. They've come out and said that.
Interesting.
If you ask him what the roadmap is, his roadmap is going to always be lighter, cheaper, more immersive. So with every iteration of the HoloLens, that's what they're going for, is lighter, cheaper, more immersive. I don't know how long it'll be before we hit that $1,000 consumer mark. I'd prefer it sooner than later, but there's lots of factors there.
So I have a quick question, and then we'll probably start wrapping things up here. What is the biggest growth factor you've seen? Because you started the Holo Developer Slack, which I'm sure basically everybody that's here or one of our fans is either a part of or should be a part of. What's one of the biggest growth factors you've seen, the differences in 2015 versus now? So what I mean by that is, are people more excited? Are people talking about a different device more, or are people or people are debating mixed reality versus augmented reality? What are some of the big trends you've seen in 2018 starting that you haven't noticed before?
I think there's a lot of excitement right now, especially around Magic Leap and a second device entering the market. You can say that there's other devices that have entered the market when you look at things like the Meta, but it's tethered, physically tethered to a computer. You can make the argument that the Magic Leap is tethered too, but at least it's something portable that you stick in your pocket and tether to. But with this second competitor entering the market, how much is it going to accelerate things? Microsoft hasn't really had any competition, so they haven't had a lot of drive pushing them to release and iterate faster, and more innovative. I still think they're doing it. I just think we haven't seen the evidence of it because they haven't had to show it. So I think that's going to be one of the trends, is that this stuff's just going to become more and more competitive and moving faster as other people come into the market. Leap Motion announced last week that they want to open source their vision of an AR headset.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
So
I can actually pull that up. Let me pull that up real quick because I don't know if people have seen that yet. Leap Motion AR. Sorry, let me pull this up real quick. Their headsets, it's only like $100 or something crazy, right?
So there's a lot of misinformation about that. If you read the article or their post about it, they think that it can be produced at scale for about $100. I don't think that you could go build your own for $100, but if somebody decided to mass produce these, and I think they said they're open sourcing the design.
Oh, interesting. So yeah, you guys could go ahead. I'll drop this link in the chat. I broke everything, but yeah. So there's more and more headsets coming out. Are you surprised by the amount of people that are joining VR right now? Like with all of the Windows mixed reality and stuff, because on the Holo Developer Slack, there used to be like no VR talk. And now I would say a good like 40-50% of the talk that is there is focused around VR or Windows mixed reality devices.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting mix, and I'm excited that there is, because it just brings more and more people into the fold of doing Windows mixed reality. I think it's still got a long ways to go. There's not a lot of compelling content out there. Like,
yeah.
I jump into it and I'm in it for a little while, but most of the stuff in there doesn't keep me coming back time after time. I do have early access to Beat Saber, which I don't know if you guys have seen the videos for that.
So jealous.
Yeah. So that I literally play almost every day, and that's the only virtual reality experience I can ever say that about.
Dang, dude.
We need to hook up for that, because I saw the videos. I've been watching the videos. We talk about it almost every week on the podcast. Just like, because that's what we talk about, is you need experiences to sell VR. We don't want to just take Skyrim and put it in VR, even though that's cool. It doesn't sell VR. Or we don't want to just take PUBG and put it in VR, even though that would be awesome. Yeah, we don't just want to do those things. We want to create VR experiences that are exclusive to it. And same with augmented reality. I mean, this goes for any new market being sold. And Beat Saber is like the first one to me that looks like it's a whole encapsulating experience that really takes advantage of all VR has to offer, and it's something that can only be done in VR. That looks awesome.
Yeah, it's really great. I play it. My kids play it. Everybody who's tried it loves it. My first kind of, I saw the videos for it, and then during GDC, I was down. There was another reception at the reactor space that you guys got to visit.
Oh,
and
yes.
The developer was supposed to be there, but they had it up on stage, and they were letting people demo it, and that was kind of my first time playing it. And then one of my Microsoft contacts hooked me up with an early access code, and I've been playing it ever since.
Well, it's coming out soon, from what I understand, so we don't have to wait too much longer. Hopefully.
Yeah, May 1st.
Oh, May 1st. Oh, okay. We won't have to wait that long at all. Okay,
yeah,
sweet.
On Steam VR and on Oculus, I believe.
Does it work on your Windows mixed reality stuff?
Yep, that's what I'm playing it on, is on my Samsung.
Okay, sweet. Okay, sick. All right, Jesse. Well, any more questions, Paul, Austin? Any more thoughts? Anything?
I think we're good. I really appreciate you taking the time to come talk to us. And I felt like it was a really good conversation, so it was great.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. Thanks, guys.
Any other last things you want to plug real quick? Twitters, practical stuff, Holo Developer Slack stuff. I mean, you're in everything, so go ahead and just plug away for half a moment.
Yeah, so if you're not part of it, the Holo Developer Slack is a great community. There's about almost 1,800 people in there now, all people who are doing mixed reality in one form or another. Follow me on Twitter at JB McCulloch. Practical Mapping is the mapping app that we have in the Windows Store for HoloLens. The contest is going for another 10 days. Yeah, a little over 10 days, or a little under 10 days, I guess. but the app's not going away. We still want people to map and kind of show us what you guys are mapping, so that'll still be available. Can't think of anything else. But feel free to reach out to me.
Yes, there's lots of ways to contact him. There's Discord. There's so much stuff. We'll have it all in the link dump down below. And I think that wraps up episode 48 of the Reality Check podcast. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Especially thank you to Jesse. We'll probably have him on again sometime soon, especially because they're doing so much stuff all the time. Maybe around the time Prax is starting to wrap up. We're big cryptocurrency enthusiasts, so we could do a whole deep dive for a whole hour longer just on cryptocurrencies and blockchain and that ideology and all that fun stuff. So thank you to everybody for joining us, and this is episode 48 of Reality Check, and we are signing off.
Thanks, guys.
So it doesn't matter if I'm there or not, right?
You were just afraid they'd abandon you. So you abandoned them. You distanced yourself